What happens to your phone, your email, your Netflix account when you die? Some people think their family is just going to figure it out. What I'm here to tell you, they are not. But that's where I come in. Hey, I'm Paula Rice, and I've spent hours, days, weeks, even months researching privacy policies, terms of service, and end user agreements so you don't have to spend the time doing that. Let's define this a little bit further. What is a digital asset? So a digital asset is really any online account that you have. In today's world, the majority of our transactions are done somehow on the internet. So now you may be thinking, well, if my family just has the passwords, isn't that good enough? And the answer is maybe in some cases, but for the most part, you want to make sure that you actually have a legal plan in place. Now, everything I'm talking about, right, is not legal advice. So you need to work with your lawyer or estate attorney in order to solidify this. But it doesn't mean that a company or a platform has to let your family member have access to your data. There are data laws and privacy laws that still govern here, even if you are deceased in many cases. So don't assume that just because they have the password means that they have all of the access that they're going to need. You need to have this documented in a digital estate and have it filed, and it's a legal document. So now you may be thinking, hey, I already have a will in place. I have a power of attorney in place. Unless you have specified a digital estate plan on how to deal with these accounts, your will and your power of attorney do not cover this information that we're talking about. You need to specifically call out the account and what you want to have done with it and have that filed with your will, but don't assume that your traditional will or power of attorney is going to cover this. And I bring up power of attorney because we are unfortunately also in a time where we're seeing increasing numbers of needing to care for our parents, our grandparents, even people probably my age, unfortunately, that are in cognitive decline with something like dementia and Alzheimer's. So if you need somebody that's going to, help you out while you are working through this state in your life, unfortunately, probably the end stages of your life, or I guess it could go on, longer. It could be years. Those people need access to this information in order to help pay bills. And like I said, the value of what's in these accounts is typically what you'll see covered in a traditional will, but the how do I get to it is through an account. And they need this information in order to continue to care for you. So don't just think that we're talking about post-life here. There is a need, unfortunately, for caring for our friends, family, and loved ones that might be in cognitive decline. And this kind of a plan on what to do with accounts and how to get these accounts needs to be documented and filed inside of that plan as well. Okay, now what if I do nothing? And that depends on the platform. So Google, as an example, after a period of inactivity, is going to shut down your account. So if you were using it for storage of photos, we all know that most people use Google for email. It's going to make it really difficult, obviously, for your family to do anything on your behalf that might need to be done. Now, those photos, they'll be gone forever. And most people don't have a box of photographs sitting in their basement anymore. Everything is digital. So those will be gone forever, potentially. And then as far as, losing access to email, that's going to make it increasingly difficult for your family to do much of anything. So if you don't have a plan in place and your family is now having to sort through all of this, they're going to have to rely on things like resetting your password or two-factor authentication, any variety of things to try to access your accounts. And without an email, which is really the cornerstone of anything digital, they are going to be lost. And So I just encourage you, once again, to think about the really, really critical, important things that either, as we mentioned, email, because it is so critical to everything else, but also look at anything that's financial, right? So if it's something that's making you money, or if it's something that you're actually paying as a subscription, that you document all that so that you can shut off the subscription so that your estate or your loved ones aren't wasting money on something that you're not obviously able to use. And then from an inflow perspective, make sure that everything is in place for either, if you have a business that's generating that, is there a way that that business is going to continue? Your family's going to need to know about that. There's all kinds of wacky ways that people are making money these days that we would have never have thought, right? Maybe grandma's selling crochet patterns on Etsy, or somebody's an affiliate or an influencer, right? These are all things that you want to make sure that if it's going to continue to posthumously make your family money, if there's a way for them to continue doing that, that they know what that account is, and then they know what the responsibility of that is. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to name an executor, which is somebody who is going to execute your wishes on these accounts. So is it that I want an account memorialized? This is something that Facebook allows you to do. Is it something that you want just shut down? Or, as I mentioned, if it's one of these social sites where there may be influencers or affiliates, and there's a way to keep that money coming in, what do they need to do? Well, we all know social media, as an example, needs continuous engagement, and somebody needs to be watching that and engaging with that community, maybe even posting new content. And so you want to make sure that somebody knows that they're going to need to do that if they want that form of income. Now, not every one of the platforms is going to let you do that. Once again, I mentioned earlier that I've spent a lot of time researching what can you do with these different accounts, and I'll talk about that here in a minute. I mentioned earlier the importance of email and making sure that you have that documented and that your executor knows how to access it. I would put your phone as the next important thing to get documented so that people know how to access the information on your phone if they need to. And Apple does have a tool called the Legacy Contact, and I will walk through that in a future video, how to set that up. But that will allow people, once you're gone, to access your device, your phone. And, most people, their passwords are saved on there, and that's their most common used apps and accounts are going to be accessible from your phone. So Apple does provide that to you. Well, like I say, I walk you through that in a future episode. Google also has a tool called your inactive account manager that you should work to set up, and we'll walk through that in a future episode as well. But if I were to prioritize, the top two things to make sure if you don't document anything else, it's your phone and your email. People can probably recreate a lot. And I will actually handle that in an upcoming episode, which is if you are in the unfortunate position where you've lost a loved one and none of this is documented, where do you start? Like, how do you even get up, when you're ready to tackle this after your grieving process, where to start? And it's going to be with those two things. And so we'll walk through that here in a minute. But like I said, if you need to reset your password, typically multi-factor authentication, whether that's a text to your phone with a code or sent to your email, those are going to be the two most important things to help your loved ones, navigate through these tricky waters. How do you get started with this now? As I mentioned, start with your phone, start with your email, get those documented, then start looking through the next priority of accounts. And I would say anything that has to do with money would move right up to the top of the list. whether that's a flow in of cash or an outflow of cash. If you have subscriptions, make sure that you're documenting those accounts so that those are kind of the first things that your loved ones can tackle. Then move on to things like social media, anything that's entertainment. You might have health accounts in there, and then all of the rest, right? So maybe it's your gym app to get, for your gym, on how you sign up for classes. And there's some other things that might be more interesting too. If you are somebody who does like ancestry.com and some genealogy, you want to make sure that stuff is preserved and handed down to the next person. I'm going to cover all of these topics on this channel. Once again, I want to save you the time of having to go read through all of these terms of service and privacy agreements and provide that information to you. If you're looking to get started right away and you don't want to wait for each of the individual episodes, you can take a look on my website. I have a free checklist to get you started that's going to help you just start to identify the accounts. There's also some templates on there if you want to dive in and start doing the documentation of your accounts. And then lastly, I do have a book that will walk you through a lot of these, different platforms. And we're going to cover them on this channel, but if you want to get a jump on it and you actually want something tangible, I did write a book. It is about digital asset estate planning. If you weren't here tomorrow, what would happen to your online life? And you can find that on Amazon. There's a link on my website to find it. But stay tuned because I really want to help you through this process.